Are you looking for scripturally sound books to talk to your kids about sex ed without the shame and trauma of purity culture? I got you. I'm Angela, the Christian Sexpert. I talk about everything sex and intimacy in Christian marriage and a little bit about talking to your kids about these things. This is the talk, 7 lessons to introduce your child to biblical sexuality. And you want to know what makes these biblically based. Let's start with lesson 1, like out of the gate, the very first thing. So this has a nice introduction on like how you're going to frame these conversations with your kids. But right out of the gate, do you remember all the things that God made in the beginning of the world? And then you're gonna it says if your child is familiar with the book of Genesis, see what he can remember about the creation of light, water, sky, land, sun, moon, stars, sea creatures, flying creatures, land animals, and lastly, human beings. I want to read you the story of the last day of creation so that you know how God made human beings different from everything else in creation. This book is really, truly looking at God's design for humans and human sexuality. For far too long, the Christian church has had kind of this don't ask, don't tell. Sex is bad, it's dirty, don't think about it, don't do it until you get married, and then you're supposed to be like the sex goddess, right? There's no great in-between education on not giving too much too soon, but still giving a comprehensive, truly biblically sound education and meeting kids where they're at, because kids are naturally curious. And so the talk by the Gilkersons and the sex ed reclaimed curriculum that you guys have heard me talk about in other videos are really looking at what the Bible tells us about sex, what the Bible tells us about the creation of our bodies, what the Bible tells us about being in relationship and marriage with one another, and really framing those in age-appropriate ways for our children. One of the things I love about the sex ed curriculum is it's 3 to 18. Guys, your 3-year-old doesn't need to know, like the mechanics, but they need to know God made boys and girls different, and your body is yours, and nobody should be touching your body without mommy or daddy knowing what's happening. And these are all really important, biblically sound conversations. Some of the books that I recommend don't necessarily come from a Christian worldview, but they're still really important information. So let's talk about body boundaries, consent, and respect. This isn't going to introduce any scripture, but it's still incredibly important information that does not contradict scripture. And don't forget, if you guys have questions about some of the materials that I recommend, you can request them from your local library and preview them before purchasing. If you aren't going to purchase, make sure you purchase from my Bezos list, because I get a tiny bit of commission. I'm talking like 3 cents off the purchase of things like this. And I would never recommend something just to make that 3 cents. I want to change the narrative for the next generation. That's part of why I'm here. Go forth and make good choices.